My name is Kieran, I'm 29, and for years I've tried convincing myself my family still loved me the way they used to. I'm not some tragic case, no crimes, no scandals, just a guy who chose a quieter path that never fit their perfect world, and maybe that's why they've slowly pushed me out of it. It happened when I arrived home unexpectedly early from a girls' trip, intending to surprise my husband. Instead, I overheard him on the phone declaring, "Marriage is a complete nightmare, man. I wake up every day regretting my decision. If it weren't for her family's money, I'd be gone already." We had just marked our third anniversary. I quietly departed, then returned at my usual time, greeting him with a kiss. 5 days later, he repeatedly called me 27 times in a single hour because he had clearly grasped what I'd set in motion. I'm struggling to even begin recounting this. My hands are literally trembling as I type this on my phone. I've composed and deleted this entry about 7 times already. Everyone in the house is asleep, and I'm just here in the bathroom, with the shower running. So Connor won't hear me weep. Connor and I have been wed for 3 years. He always appeared so authentic, unlike the men I typically encountered through my family's social circles. My family possesses a comfortable level of wealth, not extravagantly rich, but enough that I've never had to stress about expenses. Connor, conversely, hails from a middle-class background. Just last weekend, we renewed our vows in a modest ceremony attended by our closest friends and relatives. He literally wept while reciting his vows to me. He even said I was the finest thing that had ever happened to him. Anyway, I was on a girls' trip to Nashville with my 3 closest college friends. We had meticulously planned it for months, anticipating spa days, wine tours, and visits to that new rooftop bar everyone's been sharing on TikTok. But on the second day, Scarlett suffered food poisoning from a questionable hot chicken establishment, and Tina had an urgent matter to address remotely. The trip was unraveling, so we opted to cut it short. I thought, perfect, an ideal chance to surprise Connor. He constantly mentioned how much he missed me when I was away, always sending those wish you were here selfies from our couch, accompanied by his sad, puppy dog eyes. So, I booked an earlier flight back, picked up his favorite nachos from a small, unassuming place near our house, and grabbed some craft beer he'd recently become quite fond of. I was so eager to surprise him, picturing the delight on his face the moment he saw me. I entered through the garage, using my personal code, to ensure the surprise was complete. Our home has a peculiar layout, making it impossible to see into the living room from the entrance. I could hear him speaking upstairs in his gaming room, clearly on the phone as there was no other voice present. I placed the food in the kitchen and quietly ascended the stairs, intending to catch him mid-conversation. And then I heard it. "Marriage is a complete nightmare, man. I wake up every day regretting my decision." I froze on the steps, my heart literally seizing. I assumed perhaps he was jesting with a friend, so I waited for a laugh. But there was no laughter. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. The only good thing about this entire situation is that I don't have to worry about rent or bills anymore. I could literally feel my heart fracturing as I stood there. The vow renewal last weekend? Pure torture, man. I had to stand there fabricating all this romantic sentiment while her family looked on all misty-eyed. I've gotten quite adept at the performance though, Oscar-worthy. He chuckled then, a genuine laugh. But hey, small price to pay for the lifestyle, right? Her dad's discussing bringing me into the family business next year. Once I'm established there, I'll have options, more options than just being the money wife's husband. The money wife. That's what he calls me behind my back. 3 years of marriage, and to him, I'm just the money wife. I'm unsure how I managed it, but I silently retreated downstairs, collected the food and beer, and slipped back out. I sat in my car in the parking lot for nearly 2 hours, simply sobbing. My mascara was everywhere, and an elderly woman actually tapped on my window to inquire if I needed assistance. I told her my dog had passed away, the first of many falsehoods I uttered that day. I returned the food, informing them my husband wasn't feeling well, and messaged the girls that I decided to stay at a hotel near the airport to catch up on emails before returning to Nashville the following day. I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to comprehend what to do. Every memory of our relationship replayed in my mind, now tainted by this new, horrifying filter. All those instances he insisted on paying for dinner, but only at inexpensive places, his reluctance to accept my help with his student loans until I practically compelled him, how he always harbored grand ambitions, but lacked the motivation to pursue them until my father offered connections. Our anniversary gift from his parents was an engraved wooden sign for our entryway proclaiming, "Where your story begins." I had literally gazed at it this morning while drinking coffee, believing our story was just entering its next chapter. It turns out our story was merely a financial transaction for Connor. I resolved to go back to Nashville. I spent the next 3 days feigning normalcy with my girlfriends, though I was internally suffering and likely consumed far too much wine nightly. Then I came home at my originally scheduled time and embraced him with a kiss. I looked into the eyes of the man who branded our marriage a nightmare and greeted him as if nothing were amiss. I've been living this charade for 5 days now. 5 days of sharing a bed with someone who apparently dreads waking up beside me each morning. 5 days of scrutinizing every interaction we've ever shared, questioning what was authentic and what was part of his Oscar-worthy deception. I've been examining our accounts. It appears Connor has been making peculiar withdrawals. Nothing exorbitant, but like $200 here, $300 there, always just below the amount that would necessitate a conversation. Where is that money going? Has he been saving for his eventual departure? Does he have another woman? Oh God. Is there another woman? Is there someone else who knows I'm merely his money wife? Do they mock me together? I haven't confided in anyone yet. Not my friends, certainly not my family. My father adores Connor, constantly remarking that he's the son he never had. It would devastate him to learn Connor views him solely as a meal ticket. I have, however, been implementing subtle adjustments. Yesterday, I accidentally left a browser tab open displaying my separate bank account details, the one he cannot access. This morning, I casually mentioned that my father is reevaluating some business ventures due to economic concerns. I've been working late, being just a fraction less affectionate, and taking more calls privately. The bathroom faucet has been leaking for weeks, and Connor continually promised to fix it this weekend. Last night, I simply summoned a plumber without informing him. When the professional arrived, Connor appeared utterly bewildered. I merely shrugged and stated, "You seemed occupied with other matters." The plumber charged $85 for a 10-minute repair, and I could observe Connor mentally tallying that wasted sum. My strategy is yielding results. Connor is growing agitated. This afternoon, while I was out running errands, he contacted me 27 times within an hour. 27 calls. When I finally returned his call, he was virtually frantic, inquiring if everything was all right, if I was upset with him, if something had transpired with my family. I maintained a calm demeanor, explaining my phone was in my purse while I was at Target, assuring him everything was fine, and asking why he would suspect otherwise. The silence on his end was profoundly telling. So now, I'm here, composing this while sequestered in the bathroom with a shower running, attempting to devise my next move. I recognize the necessity of confronting him, but I also need to be astute about it. We have joint accounts, my blunder. My name is on the mortgage, but he's on the deed. Everything is inextricably linked. I'm striving to formulate a plan. A part of me yearns to simply scream in his face about what I overheard, but another part advocates for a more tactical approach. What if I gradually withdraw emotionally while concurrently organizing my financial affairs? What if I meticulously document every detail? What if I allow him to believe everything is normal until it is decidedly not normal for him? I believe that's my chosen course of action. He spent 3 years deceiving me. Perhaps I can manage a few weeks of the same. I must conclude, the hot water is likely depleting, and Connor will wonder why I've been in the shower for 45 minutes. I'm going to emerge, bid my husband goodnight with a kiss, and lie beside him while strategizing my escape. Edit. Connor just messaged asking if I'd like to go away for the weekend to reconnect. The sheer audacity of this man. I will provide an update when I am able. First update. First, my deepest gratitude for the overwhelming support on my previous post. I absorbed every single comment, and your words provided me the resilience needed to navigate these past 2 weeks without completely falling apart. My apologies for the delay in providing an update. I've been cautious about my online activities since Connor unexpectedly developed a peculiar habit of casually inspecting my phone whenever it is nearby. So, it has been 14 days since I overheard my husband of 3 years informing his friend that our marriage was a nightmare and that I was merely his conduit to financial comfort. 14 days of sleeping beside someone who ostensibly regrets waking up next to me each morning. 14 days of the most arduous performance of my life. The day after my initial post, I resolved to approach this systematically. No impulsive emotional reactions, no confrontations until I had every detail perfectly aligned. I compiled a list. I am, by nature, a list maker when stressed, of everything I needed to accomplish. Secure my financial position, gather evidence of his true character, not for legal purposes, but for when family inevitably queries, ascertain the precise depth of his deception, prepare an exit strategy, and establish a support network without revealing everything just yet. The first step was contacting my personal bank, the account he cannot access, and enhancing my security protocols. I altered all passwords, incorporated verbal security questions, and ensured they understood not to discuss my account with anyone but me. Then, I began incrementally transferring funds from our joint accounts into my personal one. Nothing drastic, just enough each day to avoid immediate suspicion. Is that morally questionable? Perhaps, but discovering your husband is a manipulative gold digger tends to alter one's perspective on fairness. Regarding the weekend reconnection trip Connor proposed, I agreed, but suggested we visit my family's rustic cabin by the lake instead of the luxurious resort he had envisioned. The expression on his face. Oh, it was priceless. He quickly composed himself with a "whatever makes you happy, babe," but I clearly observed that fleeting disappointment. Suddenly, everything is making sense. How he consistently advocates for expensive options when he anticipates my family might cover the cost, yet becomes budget-conscious when expenses derive from our shared accounts. The cabin trip proved unexpectedly insightful. Our Wi-Fi connection there is notoriously weak, and Connor spent almost the entire weekend glued to his phone, complaining about the erratic signal. He repeatedly wandered down to the furthest point of the dock where a single bar of service might sometimes appear. At one point, I discreetly followed him and overheard him telling someone he was going crazy trapped in the middle of nowhere and would make it up to them when he returned. Who was he speaking to, and what precisely was he planning to make up? Upon our return home Sunday evening, he immediately stated he needed to go to Walmart for some work supplies. He was gone for over 2 hours for a Walmart that is only 12 minutes from our residence. When I later checked our joint card application, there was no charge from Walmart, but there was a $60 transaction from a bar across town. During the trip, I had casually mentioned that my father was considering early retirement due to some entirely fabricated health concerns and might be scaling back certain business operations. Connor then spent the next hour asking increasingly detailed questions about Dad's plans, the family trusts, and our future financial security. He barely uttered a word about Dad's fictional health issues. It was like observing someone shed their mask without realizing they were doing so. I've also been delving into our financial history, and my discoveries were nauseating. Over the past 3 years, Connor has withdrawn nearly $17,000 from our joint accounts for what he termed business expenses and investments, funds that never reappeared and for which he cannot provide a proper accounting. There's a recurring pattern of substantial withdrawals immediately prior to his visits to his hometown, implying he has been financially assisting someone or something there that I am unaware of. Last week, while he was at the gym, I inspected his nightstand, something I never imagined myself doing, but desperate circumstances call for desperate measures. Inside, I found a second phone, one of those inexpensive, prepaid models from Target. It was password protected, but he had scribbled the code on a sticky note affixed to the back. Classic Connor, always forgetting his passwords. The phone contained only one saved contact, D, with dozens of text messages arranging meetings and discussions about money. Some referenced a long-term plan and staying the course. One from 3 months prior explicitly stated, just 2 more years and we're set. 2 more years until what? I photographed everything with my phone before meticulously replacing it precisely as I had found it. The psychological warfare has been the most peculiar aspect of this whole ordeal. I've subtly altered my demeanor, being slightly less affectionate, engaging in more private phone calls, and casually referencing conversations with our family lawyer. Nothing confrontational, just subtly different. And Connor is visibly unraveling. 2 nights ago, he actually searched through my closet while I was in the shower. I only know this because he left my boots in a different arrangement than I maintain them. Yes, I am the type of person who precisely organizes her shoes. When I emerged and noticed, I said nothing, simply rearranging them while he feigned absorption in his phone from the bed. Yesterday, I discovered him scrolling through my iPad's search history while I was preparing dinner. I had deliberately left searches for signs your husband is cheating and separate bank accounts in marriage for him to discover. When I walked in, he practically hurled the iPad onto the couch and launched into a rambling declaration about how much he adored the lasagna I was making, despite me clearly preparing stir-fry. Our refrigerator has been emitting a strange clicking sound for months, and Connor consistently claimed he would fix it. Yesterday, I casually proposed we might just purchase a new one, and he immediately entered fix-it mode, spending 2 hours tinkering with it. Suddenly, all those household tasks he'd postponed for months are being completed. The bathroom door that squeaked since last Christmas has been fixed, the broken porch light replaced, the wobbly kitchen table stabilized. It's like witnessing someone frantically attempting to prove their worth. I've begun having weekly lunches with Loretta, my best friend from college, and the only person I confided in about these events. She was initially stunned, then indignant on my behalf, and has now become my co-conspirator and sounding board. She assisted me in establishing a separate email account that Connor is unaware of and recommended I begin meticulously documenting everything. Last Wednesday, I was working late at a client meeting. In truth, I was simply at a Starbucks, discreetly scrolling through r/surviving infidelity and taking notes, and Connor unexpectedly appeared with dinner. He had never done this in 3 years of marriage. He asserted he was simply missing me but spent the entire impromptu meal grilling me about a call he'd overheard me having with Loretta, where I had mentioned making big changes. The call was actually about possibly redecorating our guest bedroom, but he needn't know that. Then came the 27 calls incident I briefly noted in my last post. I now comprehend what precipitated it. That morning, I had deliberately left some printouts from our joint account on my desk, displaying his significant withdrawals over the past year. I hadn't confronted him. I had merely left them there. When I returned home that evening, the papers were in a different position. He had seen them, panicked, and that's why he barraged me with calls while I was in meetings. When I finally called him back after the 27th missed call, our conversation unfolded thus. Me, hey, what's the emergency? My phone was in my desk during meetings. Connor, breathing heavily, no emergency, just is everything okay with you? With us? You've been different since you got back from Nashville. Me, different how? Connor, I don't know, just distant. And you've been taking a lot of private calls. And you mentioned something about your dad reconsidering his business plans. I'm worried about you. Note how he subtly interjected concern about my father's business between feigned concern for me, a classic Connor maneuver I never recognized before. Me, everything's fine, just busy with work. Why would anything be wrong? The silence on his end stretched so long, I momentarily thought the call had disconnected. Connor, no reason. I just love you, that's all. Me, I love you too. The most significant falsehood I have ever uttered. After we concluded the call, I sat in my car and wept for nearly an hour. Not because I grieved the marriage's end, but because I mourned the relationship I believed I had. The Connor I fell in love with simply does not exist. He is a character portrayed by a man who perceives me as nothing more than a bank account with a physical form attached. Last night, he proposed we arrange another vow renewal ceremony for our parents, who were unable to attend the first. When I inquired about his sudden interest in reaffirming vows, given we had just done so 2 weeks prior, he stammered something about celebrating our love with everyone important to us. Translation: he is panicking about his impending gravy train derailing and desires to solidify his standing with my family. I smiled and suggested, perhaps next year. The relief on his face was palpable. What he doesn't realize is that I have already consulted with an attorney, not our family lawyer but someone recommended by Loretta, who operates outside our social circles. I have an appointment next week to review my alternatives. I have meticulously documented the financial inconsistencies. I have safeguarded my most vital personal documents and irreplaceable family heirlooms by relocating them to my friend's house for a photo shoot for her Instagram. Another fabrication, but I have certainly learned from the master. The most peculiar incident occurred this morning. I was preparing for work when Connor approached me in the bathroom, embraced me, and began to weep, actual tears. He stated he felt as though he was losing me and couldn't comprehend why. For a fleeting instant, I almost broke down and confronted him then and there. But then I recalled the conversation I had overheard, remembered him chuckling about his Oscar-worthy performance, and I simply patted his arm, assuring him everything was fine, merely work-related busyness. His tears remarkably dried up quickly when I mentioned I might need to postpone our New York trip next month, the one where we were supposed to stay in that 5-star hotel his Instagram influencer friend recommended. It's amusing how his emotional crisis dissolved at the mere prospect of a luxurious experience, potentially slipping away. The confrontation is imminent. I am nearly prepared, but I desire him to experience a bit more distress, to feel the ground shifting beneath his feet, without comprehending why. I want him to endure even a fraction of the uncertainty and betrayal I have been experiencing. Is that petty? Perhaps, but when someone shatters your entire reality, I believe you are entitled to a touch of pettiness. Edit. For those inquiring if we have children, thankfully no. Connor always had just one more thing he wanted to achieve before starting a family. I now understand that one more thing was establishing himself sufficiently to depart with half of my assets. Edit 2. Connor just texted, asking if we can have dinner at my parents' house this weekend. He claims he misses them. I'm quite sure he does. Second update. Hello, Reddit community. It has been approximately a month since my last communication, and a considerable amount has transpired. Firstly, my sincere thanks for all your encouragement and counsel. I perused every comment, even those questioning my strategies. Believe me, I've questioned them myself at every juncture. So, picking up where I left off, after discovering Connor had been surreptitiously diverting funds from our accounts and was only with me for my family's connections, I dedicated weeks to quietly accumulating information and formulating my departure strategy. My intention was to confront him once everything was absolutely in order, but fate had alternative plans. Do you recall that dinner at my parents' home Connor was so eager to have? We attended last weekend, and it proved quite revealing. Connor was in peak charming mode, commending my mother's new drapes, posing detailed questions about my father's golf game, even offering to assist my sister in setting up her new Sonos system. To an external observer, he was the quintessential son-in-law. Yet, now that I knew what to seek, I could discern the precise calculation behind each interaction. During the meal, Connor casually stated he had been researching investment properties in my parents' neighborhood. My father, bless his heart, immediately began discussing how property values in their area were projected to appreciate by 20% over the next 5 years. Connor's eyes literally gleamed. I'm not exaggerating. It was akin to observing a slot machine hit the jackpot. That evening, after we returned home, I found him on our iPad browsing properties far beyond our financial means. When I inquired how we might possibly afford them, he smiled and remarked that my father had mentioned assisting with the down payment. My father had uttered no such thing. The following morning, I had my meeting with the attorney Loretta had recommended. She was exceptional, direct, supportive, and meticulous. She helped me grasp precisely what I was entitled to and what Connor might attempt to claim. The good news: our prenup does provide some protection, though less than I might prefer. The better news: the financial forensic analysis uncovered a pattern of deception that could potentially invalidate portions of the prenup. While I was with the lawyer, Connor was apparently experiencing a full-blown crisis at home. That morning, I had intentionally left my laptop open with a browser tab displaying flight options to my cousin's residence in California, part of my exit strategy planning. When I arrived home, Connor had prepared an elaborate dinner, my favorites: wine, candles, the complete ensemble. He was exerting immense effort to be charismatic, yet there was a desperate edge to his every move. His hands were visibly trembling as he poured the wine. Throughout dinner, he kept interjecting these peculiar comments about his profound love for our life together, his immense gratitude for me, not specifically my family, but me, and how he had never been happier. It was like watching someone performing a role for which they hadn't quite memorized all the lines. Then came the bombshell. He suggested we begin trying for a baby immediately. This, from the man who had spent 3 years inventing excuses to defer starting a family. I nearly choked on my wine. I inquired about this sudden shift in desire. Connor delivered a monologue about realizing what truly matters in life and how he was finally prepared for the next stage in our journey together. He actually became teary-eyed. Indeed, Oscar-worthy. I smiled and replied, "That's quite a coincidence, because I've been giving some thought to our future as well." The fleeting hope that crossed his face was almost tragic. I continued, "In fact, I've been reflecting a great deal on our relationship since I returned from Nashville." The hope vanished, supplanted by something closer to panic. He reached for his wine glass, so abruptly he almost overturned it. He then asked, "What kind of reflections?" It was then I decided to begin revealing my hand. Not all of it, but enough to observe him squirm. I stated I had been contemplating honesty in marriage, about what individuals truly desire versus what they articulate. Connor's face turned so ashen, I thought he might faint. He asked for clarification. Instead of responding directly, I inquired if he recalled what he had stated in his vows at our renewal ceremony, about how meeting me was the best thing that ever happened to him. He nodded, attempting a smile that resembled more of a grimace. I asked if he meant it. "Of course I did," he asserted, reaching for my hand across the table. "I meant every word." I slowly withdrew my hand. "That's interesting," I remarked, "because I could have sworn I heard you tell Danny that the vow renewal was pure torture and that you had to make up romantic sentiment while my family observed." The color completely drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. When he finally attempted to speak, I pressed on. "Or perhaps I misheard. Perhaps you didn't call our marriage a nightmare and say you wake up regretting your decision every day? Perhaps I imagined the part where you said the only good thing about our relationship is my family's money." Connor then knocked over his wine glass, sending red wine cascading across our white tablecloth. He made no move to clean it. He simply stared at me with an expression of unadulterated horror. When he asked when I had overheard it, I informed him, "When I came home early from Nashville to surprise you." "Surprise, darling." "You completely misunderstood," he began, his voice adopting that placating tone he employs when he believes I'm being overly emotional. "I was just venting to Danny about a rough patch. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated." "A rough patch?" I echoed. "Interesting. And which part was the misunderstanding? The part where you called me the money wife, or the part where you said you're only sticking around until you're established enough to have options?" His face shifted from pale to gray. He clearly hadn't grasped the extent of what I had heard. He stammered that it was taken completely out of context. "Then please, Connor," I challenged, "explain the context where telling your friend our marriage is a nightmare and you're only with me for financial gain makes sense." He, of course, could not. Instead, he abruptly shifted tactics, moving from denial to tearful apology in mere seconds. He claimed he had been experiencing a personal crisis when I overheard him, that he didn't mean any of it, that he loved me more than anything. I simply sat there, observing this performance with fresh eyes. All the behaviors I once found sincere, the tender glances, the earnest declarations, the vulnerable moments, now appeared as meticulously calculated maneuvers in a protracted scheme. "Are you leaving me?" he finally inquired. I haven't decided yet, I lied. Of course I had decided, but he didn't need that knowledge just then. What ensued was 2 weeks of the most utterly exhausting emotional manipulation I have ever endured. Connor utilized every tactic imaginable. He dispatched flowers to my office daily, accompanied by increasingly desperate notes. He contacted my parents, alleging concern about my sudden change in behavior. He proposed couples therapy, ironic, coming from someone who deemed our marriage a nightmare. He even reached out to Loretta, attempting to persuade her to reason with me. The most telling detail, throughout his campaign to preserve our marriage, he never once alluded to my family's financial standing. It was as if he was meticulously avoiding the very impetus behind his actions all along. Meanwhile, I proceeded with executing my plan. I transferred the remaining funds from our joint accounts into my secured personal accounts. I consulted with my family's financial advisor to ensure Connor could not access any family assets. I packed essential items and irreplaceable possessions and moved them to a storage unit Connor is unaware of. I also had a private discussion with my parents, which proved to be one of the most arduous conversations of my life. My father had always considered Connor the son he never had, and my mother adored him for ostensibly making me happy. Informing them that their cherished son-in-law was a fraud who merely desired their money and connections nearly broke them. Dad wished to confront Connor immediately, but I persuaded them to adhere to my lead for just a little longer. The dishwasher malfunctioned 3 days ago. Impeccable timing, wouldn't you say? Connor immediately volunteered to arrange for a repair, which was unusual as he typically complains about such costs. I suggested we simply purchase a new one, and he agreed without even inquiring about the price. He is now desperately striving to project an image of indifference towards money. Last night, we attended a dinner party at my friend Scarlett's new residence. Connor has always found Scarlett a bit much, his words, with her vivacious personality and unfiltered opinions. Yet last night, he hung on her every word, laughing at all her jokes, even complimenting her TikTok dance videos which he had previously dismissed as embarrassing for her age. Halfway through dinner, Scarlett's boyfriend, Lucas, who was entirely unaware of my situation, casually mentioned a news story about a man who had defrauded his affluent wife for years. Everyone chuckled about what an imbecile the man was for thinking he could escape detection. Everyone, that is, except Connor, who suddenly became profoundly absorbed in his mashed potatoes. When Lucas solicited his opinion on the story, Connor muttered something about not all relationships being what they seem on the surface. The table fell silent. I could feel Scarlett's perplexed gaze upon me, sensing the abrupt tension. I simply smiled and requested she pass the salt. On the drive home, Connor was uncharacteristically quiet. When we pulled into our garage, he turned to me with a desperate expression and inquired if everything was truly okay between us. I feigned ignorance, stating I didn't understand his meaning. He claimed things had felt off for weeks, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I met his gaze directly and stated, "Perhaps you should examine your conscience if you're sensing that something's amiss." He flinched as if I had struck him. This morning, I found him perusing our wedding album, an item he hasn't looked at in years. He asserted he was feeling nostalgic, but the panic in his eyes conveyed a different narrative. He is attempting to locate clues about the extent of my knowledge and my impending actions. I have scheduled a meeting with my parents and our family financial advisor for tomorrow. Connor believes it pertains to some routine trust matter, but its true purpose is to formally remove him as a beneficiary from several accounts and to discuss the ramifications of our impending divorce. I have already cautioned my parents to act naturally until after the meeting. I am no longer even angry. I am simply weary. Weary of the performance. Weary of observing him scramble to uphold his facade. Weary of pretending I am unaware that our entire marriage has been, to him, merely a business transaction. Tonight, Connor proposed we embark on a second honeymoon to reconnect. He displayed photographs of an extravagantly priced resort in Bali on his phone, describing infinity pools and private beaches. The former me would have been ecstatic. The present me merely pondered how much of my family's money he intended to squander on this final, desperate maneuver. I smiled and informed him it sounded lovely, but perhaps we should discuss it after the meeting with my parents tomorrow. The immediate relief on his face was distinct. He clearly believes he still possesses time to rectify whatever is broken. He does not comprehend that by this time tomorrow, his meticulously constructed world will be in fragments. The meeting with my parents and the financial advisor is scheduled for 10 a.m. By 11 a.m., he will grasp that I have been fully aware for weeks. By noon, he will confront the reality that the gravy train has not only halted, but is rapidly reversing course. Edit. Connor just messaged asking if I desire sushi for dinner tonight. He states he wishes to treat me to something special before our big financial meeting tomorrow. If only he knew. Last update. Hello, Reddit family. I wish to commence by extending my deepest gratitude to each of you who provided unwavering support throughout this ordeal. Your comments, messages, and guidance empowered me to find strength on days when I felt utterly overwhelmed. I promised a definitive final update once everything was resolved, so here it is, the conclusion to my narrative. That meeting with my parents and the financial advisor, it unfolded precisely as planned, and the expression on Connor's face when he grasped the gravity of the situation is something I will forever cherish. We all convened in my father's home office. Myself, Connor, my parents, and Mr. Bradshaw, our family's financial advisor since my childhood. Connor was all smiles, likely assuming this was his opportunity to solidify his position within the family finances. Dad initiated the discussion by inquiring if Connor had anything he wished to share before they began. Connor appeared puzzled but asserted, "No, everything's great." Dad nodded, then produced a folder containing printouts of Connor's clandestine withdrawals from our joint account, screenshots of text messages to Dee concerning the long-term plan, and, the definitive blow, a transcript of the phone conversation I had overheard, where he labeled our marriage a nightmare. You should have witnessed Connor's face. It was like observing someone's entire existence unravel in slow motion. He transitioned from confusion to shock, then to panic, and finally to calculation, all within approximately 10 seconds. He instantly attempted to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he had been enduring a difficult period and had said things he didn't mean. Mom, who had been quietly fuming since I confided in her, finally erupted. She denounced him as a gold-digging parasite and expressed profound disappointment in her own judgment of character. Connor actually attempted to appeal to her, asserting they had always shared such a special bond and that she knew the real him. Mom merely scoffed and retorted. Which version was the real him? The one who called his marriage a nightmare, or the one who wept during his vow renewal? The meeting concluded with Mr. Bradshaw elucidating that Connor had been formally divested from all family accounts, trusts, and business interests. Dad informed him that divorce papers would be served that afternoon and that he had 24 hours to retrieve his personal belongings from our residence. Connor's ultimate gambit was turning to me, tears welling in his eyes, genuine tears. The man deserves an Emmy, and inquiring if I was really going to discard 3 years of marriage over one stupid conversation. I met his gaze directly and informed him I was not discarding anything. He had already done that when he resolved I was nothing more than a meal ticket. The divorce proceedings themselves progressed with surprising alacrity. It appears that when one party possesses overwhelming evidence that the other entered the marriage under fundamentally deceitful pretenses, and said party commands the resources for competent legal representation, matters can advance sufficiently. Connor initially contested, demanding half of everything, including prospective interests in my family's business. His opening counteroffer was so preposterous, even his own lawyer appeared mortified. However, his standing considerably weakened when my legal team presented the evidence, the unexplained withdrawals, the concealed accounts we had uncovered, and, most incriminating of all, the recordings of him confessing he had married me for financial gain. Ultimately, he departed with significantly less than he had anticipated, though still more than he warranted in my estimation. The most gratifying moment occurred during our final mediation session. Connor's attorney introduced his significant contributions to advancing my career and supporting my family's business interests. My legal representative simply played the recording of Connor informing Danny that being my husband was his meal ticket and referring to me as the money wife. The expression on Connor's face when he realized his own words had dismantled his leverage was utterly priceless. Beyond the legal proceedings, these preceding months have been an emotional whirlwind. The first few weeks following the confrontation were the most challenging. I cycled through indignation, sorrow, mortification, and debilitating self-doubt. How could I have been so oblivious? How could I have overlooked all the warning signs? My therapist, yes, I acquired an exceptional therapist, truly the best decision ever, helped me grasp that Connor's deception succeeded not because I was foolish or naive, but because he was calculated and adept at manipulation. She helped me recognize that trusting someone is not a weakness. Breaking that trust is the failure, not extending it. I vacated our house even before its sale. Too many memories sullied by the realization that Connor had been performing rather than genuinely loving me there. I found a lovely apartment downtown, considerably smaller than our former home, but entirely my own, adorned precisely as I desire, without any consideration for another's preferences. The inaugural night in my new residence felt strangely difficult. I had been so preoccupied with the practicalities, establishing utilities, updating my address on Amazon, organizing my myriad kitchen gadgets, that I hadn't braced myself for the emotional impact. I've been rediscovering aspects of myself that had gradually receded during my marriage. Remember how Connor always remarked my laugh was too loud in public? Last week, I snorted with laughter at a TikTok while waiting in line at Starbucks and didn't even consider apologizing. Baby steps, right? My bond with my parents has actually deepened through this entire ordeal. Dad apologized to me, which completely caught me off guard. He expressed concern that growing up with affluence had made me a target and that he ought to have better prepared me for individuals who might perceive me as an opportunity rather than a person. It was the most candid conversation we have ever shared. Mom has adopted a complete mama bear stance, checking in on me daily and sending me articles with titles such as 10 Signs That Man Is Just After Your Money and How to Spot a Gold Digger. It's a bit much, but I value the sentiment. She has also arranged 3 blind dates for me already, all with men she has personally vetted for financial independence. I have declined all of them. I am nowhere near ready to date again, but her intentions are pure. My friends have been extraordinary, particularly Loretta and Scarlett, who have supported me in ways I can never adequately repay. Tina, regrettably, initially sided with Connor. They had been friends prior to Connor and I meeting, and she credited his account of events. The most peculiar aspect has been encountering mutual acquaintances who are unaware of the full narrative. Last week, I ran into Connor's friend Danny. Yes, that Danny, the one he was conversing with on the phone at Target. He offered this odd half-wave, then feigned intense interest in paper towels. I simply smiled and continued walking. Later, I observed him watching me from the parking lot as I loaded my car. It was clear Connor had relayed some version of events that portrayed me as the antagonist. Whatever. I lack the energy to care what Connor's bros now think. Last month, Connor unexpectedly appeared at my apartment. He claimed he wished to speak, to explain himself. I informed him he had 3 years to be forthright with me, and I was uninterested in whatever narrative he had now concocted. He attempted to hand me a letter, which I refused. He left it in my mailbox anyway. For a moment, I considered incinerating it unread, but curiosity prevailed. It was a peculiar blend of apology and justification. He asserted he had truly grown to love me despite his initial motivations, that he regretted his words to Danny, that he missed us and the life we had built. I read it once, then shredded it without responding. His words hold no sway over me any longer. According to Loretta's cousin, who works at that upscale steakhouse downtown, Connor is now romantically involved with the daughter of one of my father's business associates. She has been forewarned, of course, but has decided Connor is misunderstood and that I clearly did something to provoke his behavior. Some lessons, I suppose, must be acquired firsthand. I've also developed a genuine passion for cooking, an activity Connor always dominated in our relationship. Last night, I prepared an exquisite mushroom risotto that actually proved edible. Progress. Do I still experience difficult days? Absolutely. Sometimes I awaken furious that I dedicated 3 years of my life to someone who perceived me as nothing more than a bank account. Sometimes I worry about ever trusting anyone romantically again. Sometimes I still mentally replay conversations and interactions, searching for signs I should have noticed. The divorce was finalized last month, 47 days more quickly than the average for our county. The house sold swiftly, and I utilized my portion to settle some student loans I had been carrying indefinitely and invested the remainder. Connor attempted to claim emotional distress and damage to his professional reputation in our final hearing, but those assertions were dismissed almost immediately. Last week, my mother sent me a Facebook screenshot of Connor at some charity gala with his new girlfriend. My immediate reaction was neither jealousy nor anger. It was relief. Relief that he is now someone else's burden. Relief that I no longer have to question if every smile, every kind utterance, every gesture of affection is part of an elaborate performance designed to access my family's funds. The money wife is no more. Long live just plain Natalie. Oh, remember that second phone I discovered with the enigmatic contact D? It turns out D stands for Denise, Connor's ex-girlfriend from college, who conveniently reestablished contact with him 6 months after our wedding. Apparently, they had maintained communication throughout our entire marriage, with Connor regularly dispatching money to her and promising they would reunite once the plan was complete. She attached screenshots of their exchanges as proof, including one where he informed her our vow renewal was the last hurdle before they could transition to phase 2. I felt no anger when I read her message. I merely felt pity for her. She genuinely believes she is special, that he would not inflict upon her what he did to me. I sent her one concise message. Good luck. You'll need it. Many have inquired if I remain in contact with Connor's family. His parents actually reached out to offer apologies after everything came to light. They were utterly unaware of his actions and expressed horror. We exchanged holiday cards, but nothing beyond that. Some connections are simply not worth preserving.